So after, going back into this issue again, because I had looked into this very in-depthly, I'm seeing more and more. It's amazing how I've been away from the issue for so long that I went back into it. I'm seeing more and more the world of this is opening up big time for me. And I'm afraid of what I see. I'm afraid that we have been again duped into thinking the exact opposite and went back to works again under the idea of Pelagianism. So now we have to look at Augustinianism and Pelagianism. And who was Pelagius? Because it was a huge heresy in the beginning of the church. But this goes back to Paul and Gnosticism and the early church and the idea that you have the ability by your free will to do good works to satisfy God. This actual heresy goes back to works salvation. Pelagianism and Arminianism had to do with self-effort, self-will. So the funny thing is that all along that you people who believe in free grace and everything like that are actually espousing an idea that believes in self-worth. It's the truth. I hate to break it to you, but it is. That Arminianism and Pelagianism had to do not with grace. It was against the gospel, the idea of grace, and was more at works. So then when I went into Romans chapter 9, and I pointed out that it had to do with the gospel, and I pointed out that God said that it was his sovereign choice, that the two children that were born that one would serve the other. Jacob I loved and Esau I hated. The two children who were in the womb not having done any good or evil, so that God's choice had nothing to do with what they did. It's exactly what it says. Although I got it. Well, God knew that they were going to do something. He did predestine them because he looked forward into time. And I have to say to you that God didn't look forward into time. God planned time. God predestined time. God's will worked what was going to happen in the future. He didn't look at it and then predestine it. It was God's will to make the future, not to have somebody else make it for him. Everything that you say that God looked into time to give man merit is all about taking the glory away from God. This is why the wisdom of God wouldn't let that happen. It wasn't because God was unrighteous. It's because man would then have the ability to say that God owes him something. God doesn't have any right on his creation. And this is basically the sin of Adam and Eve. That they had the right to do what they had to do when they were going to eat of the law, and they could show them how they could be like gods themselves. And that they didn't have a creator, were denying their creator. And God said, I'm going to give you grace. Here's the tree of life, and here's the tree of knowledge. The whole thing fits together like a major puzzle. It's just the thing that people don't want to hear. But the truth is that God plans things. It says God predestined according to God's plan. The two children in the womb, the one would serve the other according to God's plan. Not God looking forward and looking at what your plan would be. I know this is insulting. Paul said it was. It was the gospel. The gospel is an offense. And so if I'm offending you, it's only because that's what the gospel is supposed to do. But the truth is, the real affront is to saying that you have some sort of room to boast, that you had some good works that God saw in you. And so he saw something good in you, which made him choose you, because you chose him first. It says nowhere that it says, I chose you, you didn't choose me. You thought you chose him, but he chose you first. All this is doing is trying to flip back to God looked into the future and you chose. I looked at the word chose and will. There's only one place that says free will. It's an offering. But really our will is bound in God. And there's only one time where we saw choose this day. All the other occasions that you see having to do with salvation had to do with God's choice. It had to do with God's will. It had to do with God's plan. And you see, the thing is that if God is not able to have the sovereign will to do what God does, then God is not God. I mean, I know everybody wants to say that, well, then God is unrighteous, but Paul just as much as said that. He said that you would say that God is unrighteous. And the truth is from my perspective, God was perfectly righteous. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was making sure that you had no room to boast, no place to say that you have any right to say anything back to God. But you will say, well, I demand that God let me into heaven based on my good works. Can't you see you're going back to work salvation? I don't know. I mean, if you could show me different, fine. I know you want to keep flip-flopping and resisting. But the honest truth is, the more I look at it, the more I see it, it is plain, simple, and clear. Work salvation. Thank you.